with 6 world powers on its controversial nuclear program. While talks are held in Vienna with no sign of a breakthrough on the outstanding issues, back home in Iran, many people feel their government shouldn't agree to scale back on its nuclear program. Strong opinions expressed in this report from Tehran by Antoine, Mariotti and Alexander Turnbull.
Thousands of devout Iranians attending Friday prayers at Tehran University. In the front row, administration officials gathered for the imam's weekly remarks. Iran and the West are looking to hatch out a final deal within the next few days, but the preacher's tone is far from conciliatory.
Iran will not take a single step back on its uranium enrichment program. We will fight for our indefeasible right to produce nuclear energy. Rather than writing a letter to the supreme leader, Obama must give proof of his good faith. The ink on his letter has yet to dry, but he's already extending the sanctions.
Despite the US president reaching out to the guide personally, few in Iran trust the West, starting with the United States. Outside the mosque, a small group of vocal hardliners are campaigning against their government, which they accuse of being too soft.
The government must listen to our leader and not cross the red lines he has drawn. The Iranians are afraid their rights won't be defended.
Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has expressed publicly his support for the Iranian negotiating team. Yet, within Iran's political establishment, some officials echoed this call for the administration to stand its ground.
Call them concessions if you want. In any case, we made too many. The Americans say they will lift the sanctions gradually. But we won't accept that. They must be lifted altogether. We've already given too much.
According to this view, Iran's decision to return to the negotiating table had nothing to do with last year's new batch of US and EU sanctions, but their impact on people's daily lives provide a convenient narrative.
You will pay the price. At the height of the sanctions, when the Iranians had not yet found mechanisms to circumvent the sanctions through trade with non-Western countries, there was a huge shortage of medicine in Tehran just a couple of years ago, and many cancer patients died.
But analysts close to the reformist administration say the likes of former conservative President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad are simply desperate to cover up a trail of failed policies implemented when they were in power.
Some people have been died, but it was not because of the sanction. Exactly because of this fact that they allocated the money of the import of the drug and medicine to import the luxury cars. The price of drug has increased very sharply. The people suffered a lot. 100%. It was because of the mismanagement and organized looting trend of the wealth of Iranian people, not anything else.
Lailaz says Iranian businesses won't go bust if the negotiations were to fail. The country's economy is in fact recovering, and the West's hardline approach has had little impact.
And we are familiar with the sanction. Since past 35 years, we could be able to pass it, bypass it, and we bypassed it in many times, in many cases.
One thing Iranian officials all agree on is more sanctions will only push Iran closer to China, Russia and India, countries that have proved valuable partners and eager investors in recent months.
And for more on Iran's nuclear talks, I'm now joined from Vienna by Reza Mariotti. He's from the National Iranian American Council, and he's attended many rounds of negotiations between Iran and world powers. Hello, thank you very much indeed for joining us on today's Focus segments. Now, Britain's Foreign Secretary says that the deadline for a deal is unlikely to be met. Do you agree? And if so, why not?
That it is within the realm of possibility. But I think we should be careful what we wish for, because extending the talks beyond the November 24th deadline carries a domestic political cost for all parties involved, and it makes it much more difficult to achieve success in the negotiations the longer that we wait. The reality of the situation is there's no breakthrough that would occur 1 month, 3 months, 6 months from now that couldn't be achieved today. These are political decisions that have to be made in Tehran and the P5+1 capitals. The sooner they make those painful decisions, the better.
Now, earlier this week, Philip Hammond also said that Iran needed to show more flexibility. Is it being inflexible, do you think?
I absolutely agree that Iran should show more flexibility. Of course, I also think that the P5+1 needs to show more flexibility as well. That's not to say that either side has been entirely unflexible. We've gotten this far in the negotiations precisely because they've been flexible. But I think there's a propensity in a lot of diplomatic negotiations to save your trump card, if you will, until the 11th hour. And there's no reason to wait until November 23rd or the early morning hours of November 24th to make compromises that you could make today. So both Iran and the P5+1 are going to need to make more compromises in order to achieve a successful result.
Now, as we saw in our report, there are people in Tehran who think that the Iranian negotiators are too soft. What kind of impact does that sentiment have on negotiations, do you think, if any?
Well, I think that those people are entitled to their opinion, and it's a very real opinion within the Iranian body politic. But we should also remember that President Hassan Rouhani won the presidential election in Iran about a year and a half ago, overwhelmingly, precisely to solve this nuclear issue. And the Iranian system has made a decision to solve this nuclear issue within reason. So the degree to which painful compromises need to be made, the Iranians are going to have to sell that to their public, just like the Americans, the French, and other P5+1 members are going to have to sell the painful compromises that they make to their respective publics.
So let's assume all sides make these painful compromises, as you call them, and a deal is reached. How significant would that be?
It would be nothing short of historic. This unnecessary crisis related to Iran's nuclear issue has been going on for over a decade. And really, Iran's tensions with the West have been going on for close to 3 decades, especially Iran-U.S. relations. Very, very toxic. If you solve the nuclear issue, because it is the 8,000-pound gorilla in the room, it can serve as a foundation or a springboard to potentially address a range of outstanding issues between the two sides and try and find peaceful solutions to conflict across the Middle East.
Now, in our report, it suggested that sanctions haven't actually hurt Iranian society all that much. Is that true?
I think it's quite clear that sanctions have hurt Iranian society, especially innocent Iranians inside of Iran. But sanctions alone are not going to cause the Iranian government to capitulate. That hasn't happened any time in the past, and there's no evidence to suggest that it'll happen in the future. So what sanctions can do is serve as leverage at the negotiating table, bargaining chips that the P5+1 can cash in order to get Iranian concessions of equal value. And I think that's what we've seen so far, and we're going to need to see more of it as November 24th approaches.
Reza Mariotti, thank you very much indeed for joining us today for Focus. Thanks a lot. All right, time now for a quick break. I'll be back in a few minutes with the headlines for you. Stay tuned to France 24.